What's up, people? It's another edition of the New Breed Podcast, the world's best new metal adjacent podcast from two dudes who are really there. I want to have your hosting duo, Jay Horskow. With me, I have my partner in crime, the notorious TIM, Tim Minister Jr. Tim, how goes it?
Great. Hey, just so we remember to say this, we did our 300th episode last week. So this is
That is
301,
bananas.
right,
That is
dude?
absolutely bananas. I never in a million years. Never in a million years. Uh
300 episodes centered around new metal is absolutely crazy.
Longer than most podcasts, truth be told.
Yeah, I mean, it only would it take 5 years? So,
I mean, we do one a week. We're pretty regular. I mean, even though people don't for the little bit inside baseball for those fans that care. No, there are some weeks that Tim and I don't record because we build up such a backlog that we're like, all right, we don't want to get too far in front of it. But for the most part, we do this everybody every week, every Wednesday we get together, so it's kind of a fun time. All right,
it's excuse to drink and hang out.
it's really what it is. Excuse to drink, hang out, and talk shit about music. All right, what are we talking about this week, everybody? This week we're gonna go. Like Tim said, we're a new metal podcast. We do things new metal. I'm wearing a red Yankee hat. This week, we're going to talk about an industry that was adjacent to new metal, but definitely used new metal to leverage some success in its own industry. But conversely, some of the new metal artists and some of the bands leveraged this industry to drive themselves drive some success out of the bushes there. And what are we talking about, everybody? We are talking about the proliferation of video game soundtracks and new metal, specifically 94 to 2004. So this was an interesting deep dive to do some research on, because when I look back, you realize that uh, new metal and video games coming together is basically a convergence in digital culture. Right? What we were doing here in the United States and what was basically happening in the West, this was a um, this represents a shift, right? Because at this point, CD-ROMs are getting cheaper and cheaper. Blank CDs, Tim, you remember the old days where you download and burn albums? Getting cheaper. The availability was getting larger, so they were holding more. You started to see things like external hard drives are starting to pop up, not so insanely expensive. I will tell you, Tim, I remember I spent $150 on a 120 gig Seagate external. Now you can get what, 4 terabytes for that?
Yeah.
Two on a solid state. It's kind of wild
I buy a 4 terabyte probably once every 6 months.
just to throw stuff on.
Well,
It's
it saves all of our new breed stuff but
right.
yeah, I mean, Zoom takes up a lot of fucking gigs, man.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it really does. Eats your space. Back in 94, we were looking at the rapid expansion of optical media, what you could store on it. We're looking at the CD-ROM. New metal, it comes out of the underground. TRL grabs it. Pop culture grabs it. Ozfest is all over the place. And these two things kind of come together and collapse in a weird sort of way. And that was really, really fascinating, because there were bands that literally leveraged video game soundtracks to rise in popularity. There was the idea of, hey, maybe we get this on the soundtrack. We've done so many episodes on movie soundtracks, but kind of the same logic. Hey, get our shit on a movie soundtrack. Maybe somebody notices and somebody picks us up and starts paying attention. We've done an episode on the Mortal Kombat soundtrack. We're eventually going to do a episode on Judgment Night. We will eventually do an episode on Spawn. Those movie soundtracks were big, right? They were big, and they helped introduce a whole generation of people to music that they might not have ever heard of before. I think if we're going to start, I think we need to go back a bit, Tim, and let's talk about the technological limitations of music in video games, right? Are you old enough to remember Atari 2600, right?
Yeah.
Like that chip tune type stuff. Uh, the original home video game system was the Magnavox Odyssey in 1972. We had one of these in
Damn.
we had one of these in the house. I remembered having one where you had to put there was no sound. You had to put the laminate up on the screen. You would literally stick a plastic screen onto your TV screen, and then there would be a light in the background. That it was totally insane. However,
72, you said?
72 is when it came out. And Jamie, pull that up. There is a Magnavox ODY SSEY
I wonder if you
screens.
could still buy one of them.
I don't know. But yeah, there was a, I'll show it to you when we're done recording, Tim. There's actual screen overlays that you would stick these plastics on the screen and the lights would move behind it. It's totally ghetto, but really cool. Really cool if you think about it. That's where this technology started.
I guarantee if you go on like YouTube and go to like a retro video game channel, they have one.
They have used screens here. The ski slope game, the tennis game, the downhill skiing game, which I explicitly remember. We should buy one of these just to frame it and hang it up in the house. Anyway, 1972, Pong comes out for Atari, and it's got the beep, blip, blip. That's it. That's it. It's just one sound. This though showed that it could be done. Showed it could be done with that technology. And fast forward a little bit, go to 78. We have Space Invaders, which if I mean I can still hear that. I can hear that music in the back of my head if I close your eyes and really think about it. This is monophone. They created loops in the games that would just loop nonstop. And the this was out of necessity because memory was not big. These cartridges did not have a lot of memory. And it was too expensive to store pre-recorded audio. So what? Getting old. So what Atari did is they stored this like chip tune type music type stuff because that was less intensive, less cost consuming, space consuming, but it also gave the ability to create some sort of music with it, right? In the 80s, the mid 80s specifically, Yamaha creates synthesizers that run on frequency modulation, FM, right? This allowed for more tones. It still sounded electronic, a little bit cartoony, but it was you were able to do more with it. And this leads all the way up to 1989, where we truly had sample-based audio showing up in video games. The Commodore Amiga and the PC Engine, they started using short samples of real instruments. So now we're getting closer and closer to what we know today. However, the biggest change was in 94 with the PlayStation because the CD-ROM comes out and that is a lot of space to store music and a game. PlayStation 1 supported 24 channels of 16-bit samples at 441 kilohertz as a sample rate. This is studio quality audio coming from a video game system. Now at this point, you don't have this Chinese wall, right? This divider between video game music and real music. So at this point, music game companies can go, huh? Yeah, yeah, we can do some fun stuff with this. So just to recap, we go from the Magnavox Odyssey, which is fully analog, no sound, to the 2600. Had the Atari 2600 had a TIA chip. After that, you have the Nintendo, which had a 5-channel sound system, the Rico 2A03. Sega Genesis was even more. It was 10 channels, so it doubled it. Then you have the PS1, which was it's called SPU. This was 24 channels with uncompressed studio audio. Then we get to the PS2. Tim and I were just talking about this before we started recording. PS2 and Xbox had real-time effects, massive libraries. This was a totally its own musical controller. And this architecture continuously picking up speed. This revolution in the late 90s in the video game console was basically a playback device. And you could do real music and you could listen to what amounts to studio level musical quality in a video game, and it was not a big deal. Tim, what was the first video game system you had?
PS1.
Okay. We
Well,
had
my personal one. My dad had
the
Atari and
Atari.
Nintendo. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember us I remember us having Atari. I remember my mom and my Aunt Anna staying up all night one night playing Pac-Man. We woke up the next morning, they were still up. They were still playing. There were also times where my mom would work nights. We would sleep in either their bedroom or on the fold out because my mom would come home from work at like 1 a.m. and she would want to play video games, just turn her brain off. She played Tetris, God. Tetris and Jaws on Nintendo and tennis and oh God, all those terrible, terrible games. But yeah, I get it from my
Well,
mom. I come by it honestly.
yeah, I remember Nintendo. We used to play Gunsmoke all the time.
Yep.
Or was that Nintendo?
Yeah, it was Nintendo. It was
Yeah.
Nintendo. My first PlayStation was I was in college and I discovered what credit cards were. And I got a credit card from Kmart which had like a $350 limit, which just covered a PlayStation. And I remember I remember taking it home with me over winter break to beat Metal Gear Solid.
Oh,
And I was so proud of myself.
I used to
But
play
yeah,
Final Fantasy VII all the time.
uh-huh, uh-huh. I know everybody who's watching or listening to this video knows where we're going to go with this game. And the game that we're going to talk about is you now have this big bag of licensed soundtracks and music coming into video games. And where else would we start but in September 99, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater gets released. This is the timing was serendipitous because at this point nu metal is exploding, skateboarding is in the public culture, punk rock, this is all like extreme, right? The X Games, all this stuff gets bundled under one big banner. And Tony Hawk, the Tony Hawk Pro Skater basically exploited that. I don't think it was purposeful. I just think it was timing. But they inadvertently became the paragon of that idea. Uh, this game had the Dead Kennedys. It had Suicidal Tendencies. It had Papa Roach. It had Power Man 5000. I read an article that described it as the video game soundtrack was like a handmade mixtape. That's what it felt like, rather than some giant corporate product. For a lot of millennials, Tony Hawk Pro Skater, this was their gateway to alternative music. This is the first time they heard or saw stuff that was a little bit more aggressive and not necessarily shit you'd hear on the radio. Uh, the lead singer of Goldfinger was interviewed, and he said that video games, and Tony Hawk Pro Skater in particular, this did more for the commercialization of punk rock and alternative music than MTV and every single music magazine combined. And if you think about it, he's probably not wrong, right? I mean, there were bands that they showed up on a video game soundtrack and they went from either kind of obscure to something where, oh, wow, these bands are kind of cool. For example, Primus, I read a Primus interview where they talk about they were encountering fans that only knew them from Jerry Was a Race Car Driver because it was on the video game soundtrack. Bad
I'm not
Religion,
surprised.
Bad Religion, the song "You," which was on Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, they have been quoted as saying that was the track that made them famous. So back to 1 and 2 and even 3, Goldfinger, what's his name? I just mentioned him. What was his name? John Feldman. Their song Superman was on Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1. They said that song, as far as the fans are concerned, became the unofficial anthem of that series. By the way, you ever listen to Goldfinger, Tim?
Yeah,
They're actually really talented.
great band.
Yeah, really really enjoyable. It's extra mozzarella stick music, but
Yeah, oh, yeah,
we'll
yeah.
take it. Uh, Papa Roach on Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, their song Blood Brothers. They're convinced that this propelled them to the multi-platinum band that they are today. When Worlds Collide by Power Man 5000. This was on Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. This was that stereotypical like radio adjacent friendly-ish aggressive nu metal song. But on the same game, you have Papa Roach, you have Power Man 5000, and you have Guerrilla Radio by Rage Against the Machine, which is really, really wild to think about because I like the first two Rage albums. I saw them play they did 5 nights sold out in New York off Evil Empire. I saw them play with the Wu-Tang Clan. I've seen them a bunch. Nobody loves capitalism more than Rage Against the Machine. Nobody. Nobody. And Tom Morello, if you're listening, come on and argue with me in your stupid Che Guevara shirt. Nobody loves capitalism more than Rage Against the Machine and their $35 t-shirts they sell on their website. And anybody who believes otherwise is a complete sucker. Moving along. Alien Ant Farm. They had a big surge in 2001 mainstream. Their song Wish shows up on Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. I read an article, a review of the time, which talked about video games. They were not only marketing, but the specific term they used was video games were a Trojan horse for breaking new music into the mainstream culture because everybody was playing PlayStation and everybody was playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Absolutely.
So much music, Tim, got used in all these video game soundtracks. EA Sports in the game, Electronic Arts, they actually established a department to curate licensed music for its sports titles. So this is Madden, this is FIFA, this is NHL. And what they were trying to do was quote unquote change the sound of sport. That was from Steve Schnurr, who was the head of EA Tracks. And he said they didn't want Madden to sound like your parents' sport, and they gave up classic rock anthems by Queen and AC/DC, the same bullshit you hear when you go to the stadium. They wanted to get in front of the next generation of music like nu metal and rap rock. And they really wanted to look for quote unquote discoverable music, introducing players to genres they might not hear on the radio. That's actually awesome. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's a good thing that they did that because who wants to go to a game, hear that nonsense, and then play the game and hear that nonsense?
Yeah. I mean, that's God, how many times, Tim? I mean, how many games have we been to across all sports where you hear "We Will Rock You"
Oh my
and you hear
God.
"Hell's Bells" and "Enter Sandman," and it's sad but true. And look, these are good songs, but can we get some Earth Crisis? I mean, think
Dude.
about it. Think about the Padres reliever. You know who I'm talking about. He
Yeah.
comes out to "Blind" by Korn. People are acting like this is the most amazing thing that they have ever seen. Can we take a minute to realize that song is 27? No, 30 years old? Over 30 years old.
Oh 04, 14,
32.
24. Yeah.
32 years old.
That's yeah,
And we're
it's
excited.
that's absolutely crazy to think about right now, actually.
Yeah, it is totally nuts. And it's all I'm not shitting on it. It's awesome. Like I actually saw somebody did a bootleg t-shirt. It's the brown with the yellow lettering. And it said Padres in the Korn font and the R was backwards. And on the back it said blind and it had his number. That's awesome. I'm sorry, that's awesome. But again, the song's 32 years old. Like, can we get somebody come out? Imagine a middle reliever comes out to Meshuggah. Awesome. Tim, you and I got to find a way to get in charge of the Phillies music, like that they come out to and shit. We would last one game, and it would be so amazing. It'd be
Yeah.
so amazing.
Fucking whatever player comes out to cattle decap.
The opening
No,
that he
yeah.
hits he hits for like a minute and a half. That would be unbelievable. Madden 2003. This is not only the big at this point, it becomes the biggest version of Madden to date, right? It's a cultural milestone, but the music itself, Head PE was on that soundtrack. Andrew WK was on that soundtrack. A lot of stuff on that soundtrack came out and turned out to be pretty big songs in its own right. Wait a minute, I had a list here.
I wonder how
Madden.
these bands got if there was a one-time fee for the song or the label, or do they still get paid off of game sale? Like, how does that even work? That's what I need to know.
I don't know. So I can tell you for 2003, the official soundtrack. Andrew WK with Party Hard. What an amazing album. Good Charlotte with the anthem. Nappy Roots with Marcos Curiel from POD. Oh Nah. Audio Vet, The Energy. Epidemic, Walk Away. OK Go, Get Over It. Dry Cell, Body Crumble. Seether, Fine Again. Bon Jovi. Every Day. Head PE with Suck It Up and Kwarashi with Mr. Jinx. What the hell was Kwarashi?
No clue.
What the hell is a Kwarashi? It's an Icelandic rap rock band. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Anyway, uh, this is at this point, 2003. This is where video games truly become the way that young people find new music, not the radio, not MTV. They start to find it in video games, racing games specifically. Need for Speed Underground. They had stuff from Static X and Mudvayne on their soundtracks. This is that fit that wild neon aggressive culture that in the racing game makes sense to have this type of music. And when you look at this whole thing starts in the mid 90s, it's starting to peak around 2000 going forward. If you look at the nu metal albums that were the peak of the year 2000, Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park, Infest by Papa Roach, LD50 by Mudvayne, Chocolate Starfish by Biscuit, and then Untouchables by Korn. So these are all bands that have their shit big. Nu metal is ascendant. Nu metal is huge. And I did see some stuff, Tim. Um, there was an alignment of aesthetics regarding the like visually how nu metal looked. And the example I'm going to give you is the fisheye reach. right? The fisheye lens with the person reaching out, right? This is quote unquote the classic nu metal pose. And it was distorted in a way that it seemed like the person taking the picture was coming through the frame. And that with the crouch, like the squatting Gopnik, the
Yeah.
aggro nu metal crouch, uh, that showed up not only in the videos, but it also showed up in character animations of some of the fighting in extreme sports games, which is really kind of cool. If you look at some of the settings of some of these games, especially like the Tony Hawk games, right? It's urban decay, it's warehouses, it's skate parks. It's very much in that aggressive element. Um, with this, though, there were bands that specifically wrote songs for soundtracks. So we don't talk about that a lot, but there were bands that wrote a song specifically for its inclusion on a video game soundtrack. The examples being Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, Edema, which is Marky Chavez, Jonathan Davis' the younger stepbrother. They wrote Immortal for that game. And Cold wrote a song for PsyOps the Mindgate Conspiracy. Do you remember that?
No.
I remember that game. I think that was a PS1 game, wasn't it? Hold on. Let's Jamie pull that up. We need our own in-house where is it? Where
We're
is
not cool enough for that.
it? Copy. Oh, we could find somebody. If we pay John Detox enough, I'm sure he would do it. It was an action adventure game. I remember this. It was a first person shooter where you had guns, but you also had psychic powers. And what was the name of the Cold song? Development. It doesn't talk about. I gotta find that. I will find up the reference and come back to it. With that being said, though, it was really kind of cool that you have bands creating music for the games capitalizing on the band's popularity. It becomes this flywheel of stuff that's playing popularity forward. There were some bands that really really benefit. They really benefited from having their stuff either on video games or video games adjacent. So when you think about Papa Roach, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 was huge. Now, granted, their major label debut, the band, the song, the band, the album Infest, it sold 30,000 copies in its first week. I was one of those copies, and I'm embarrassed to admit that. Eventually went quadruple platinum. Blood Brothers was the biggest song on the record, and they proceeded to take off throughout the mid 2000s. I mean, they had an album in 2004 actually hit platinum. So at this point, nu metal was kind of still sticking around.
Couldn't even
Stat
tell you what that record is.
Nope, I know two songs: Infest, They're Coming to Infest, and Last Resort.
Oh God. That was
Static,
2004?
yeah. 2000 was the first album.
Oh shit, I thought Infest was their first album.
It is. 2004 was Getting Away with Murder, where that actually went platinum as well.
Oh, I know that song. Okay.
Static X, they go platinum in 2001 on a Wisconsin Death Trip. They had a song "The Only" on Need for Speed Underground, which was huge, and which is really kind of wild because I did do some digging into Reddit, and there were people on Reddit talking about this was their introduction to nu metal. Was Static X on Need for Speed Underground. Uh,
That's not a terrible way to come in.
Another thing, Tim, which I completely forgot about until I was doing this research, Halo 2. Breaking Benjamin did the music for one of the scenes, one of the actual there's a boss battle scene where you're fighting two of the hunters. Those things you got to get behind and all that sort of shit. They did the music for that, that is wild. And earlier we talked about bands that recorded songs for soundtrack. This is a band recording a track to fill narrative inside of the game. Uh, the presence of this song, Halo 2's soundtrack, became the first video game score to reach the Billboard charts,
Damn.
which is totally insane. Totally insane.
Then you got to worry about that. Then you got to wonder about that pay structure as well. Like, how much did they get paid for that?
Yeah, I'm sure there's residuals, like licensing residuals, maybe, or maybe they just got paid a flat fee. I don't know. I don't know.
It's like, all right, if you're Grand Theft Auto 5 or whatever the newest one that's supposed to come out, do you get paid by how many it sells? Because I'm sure that's gonna Eclipse sales. Isn't there a new one coming out or something?
Eventually, but we might sign on, and I'm 120 pounds and skinny by the time that comes out. So who knows? With this rise and with this popularity of video games and new metal, Tim, now we need to cover the other side of it. And the other side of it is the inevitable decline of both new metal and new metal in gaming. New metal crashes in 2004. We've had this conversation before. We're going to get to it again when we go through our yearly march and we get to this year. But there was a lot of things that culminated in this sound really starting to wear on the audience. So 9/11, right? This was a major factor in everybody not wanting this overly in your face aggressive uh sound. People were looking for something different. I mean, we talked about Crashing Around You by Machine Head, which got pulled. We talked about the aborted Tattoo the Earth tour, which basically contributed directly to Vision of Disorder's undoing. Um, Significant Other came out in '99. Shit, they did a video on top of the World Trade Center for Roland. Never
Wild
to
to
be done
think
again.
about.
Yeah, it's really wild when you think about it. The what happened culturally for those of us that were alive, those of you that were alive, or if you weren't around back then or weren't old enough to remember, the world did literally changed overnight, and people were looking for less aggressive stuff. They wanted something a little bit more real, a little bit more in the feelings, which is where you have your emo explosion, AFI, Yellow Card, My Chemical Romance, all that stuff explodes. But at the same time, we got stuff like the Strokes, the Jets, the White Stripes, all that
Oh,
indie
yep,
rock. Like,
yep.
I got soul, but I'm not a soldier. I got ham, but I'm not a hamster.
Does he seriously say that?
No, I've changed the lyrics. Ham, but I'm not a hamster. I've got wank, but I'm not a wankster. I've got gang, but I'm not a gangster. Like I've butchered that to death. We should do a drunken karaoke night one night as a video. We should go on Twitch and do that and scare people
God.
away. Uh, the other thing we talked about this a little bit with Moonshine Music. It's the licensing nightmare. So licensing deals are typically nightmares for game developers and for the artists because there are separate copyrights for the song and then the recording. With that, many contracts for licensing only last between 7 and 10 years. So when the license expires, if the game is still out there, you got to patch that music. You need to pull it out. So think about the long-term pain in the ass that creates. Um, Along with the technology advancing to the point where it's just cheaper to hire your in-house composer to make music. I mean, how many different versions of the Game of Thrones theme song have we heard? How many different, which is not too far off from the Halo soundtrack when you're doing the Force Runners, right? I mean, that first Halo game was amazing. Um,
Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if it's in your notes. I didn't see all of them. Is the soundtrack for I was gonna say Metal Gear Solid. That's not what I meant to say. What's that game where you would crash in the shit?
Grand Theft Auto, not Need for Speed.
Oh, what the hell is it called? They have a fucking show about it.
Yes, Twisted Metal.
Twisted Metal. They had good soundtracks.
The metal soundtrack. There we go. TV. I don't want the TV series soundtrack, you jabronis. Original video game soundtrack.
That had a bunch of weird stuff in it.
These look like all originals.
Really?
It looks like it. Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Could have swore when I've played all of them that they had like real bands in them.
I don't know. You know what? Let me do some digging because Google's not helping. But Twisted Metal. They talk about the game. Did you watch the TV show, by the way?
I didn't.
Oh, I want to know if it's any good. Uh, the TV show has Andrew WK, Rage Against the Machine, Oasis, The Offspring, Rob Zombie. I wonder if he's
Oh,
out of breath in this version. I should
oh.
also look that up.
Apparently it did good because I think they did a second season of
Yeah,
that.
they're doing a second season. Uh, so we talked about licensing problems. We talked about new metals that will pop and decline. At this point, Video games are also taking themselves more seriously. They're becoming a more highbrow form of entertainment. They're standing on their own 2 feet. It's more games are more cinematic. There's all these big cutscenes. At this point, the video game industry moves from the concept of a jukebox in your game, where you're playing different licensed tracks, to truly like a fully like a John Williams esque orchestral score, because it's easier, it's more fitting, and it also the original compositions, they can actually resonate with people, right? I mean, all of us can close our eyes right now and hum out Game of Thrones. We could also hum out the intro to Pornhub if I'm not lying. Uh, but this is more prestigious, where the inclusion of licensed music, especially new metal, at this point is kind of looking at being juvenile. The tastes were changing, tide was going out, and new metal just wasn't part of it anymore. Uh, the funny thing. So here's the funny thing. As is most cultural relevance from the 90s, TikTok has totally dusted this stuff off and brought it back out into the zeitgeist. In 2020, there was a remaster release of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. Uh, I also found somebody saying the interest in new metal reached its highest point in 20 years in 2023. Driven by a generation of gamers who are entering their prime spending years and wish to reconnect with the adrenaline and energy of their childhood bedrooms. Okay, I get it. Nostalgia always sells. We were just talking about the other day, Tim, how hardcore is back. Like the new metal revivals here, hardcore's back. We got to get out before the bullet belts and swoop jeans, swoop haircuts,
Oh
chick
yeah.
jeans come back in. But it is going to come back. But the funny thing is, culturally, new metal was everywhere. It was at the mall and Hot Topic. It was on MTV. It was in summer at Ozfest, and it was even in your video games. So this stuff was everywhere, and you couldn't get away from it. And it truly it helped develop use more of the technology, but it also took new metal to a giant global audience. And for a good 10 years, I would argue, yeah, 94, 2004, uh, video games were the biggest promotional vehicle for some of these bands, for some of the biggest named rock acts in the 21st century. And as new metal, the tide goes out, culture changes, right? Things shift. Licensing was a pain in the ass. Uh, there is still a legacy to think about when it comes to new metal being involved in soundtrack. And we can all close our eyes right now and picture the fisheye lens, and we can hear the drop D tuning accord. All this is, all this is to say that for a very unique moment, new metal was the culture. It wasn't a culture, it was the culture. And explaining that to people who are younger now, it blows their mind. But there was a time, it's like that meme where, like, hey, Limp Bizkit was the biggest band in the world. And it says, okay, grandma, let's get you back to bed. Like,
Yeah.
at one point, they were. Like, at the turn of the century, the two biggest bands in the world were The Prodigy and Limp Bizkit.
You're not lying at that. I mean, if I don't know, people listening are from all over the place. So if you're from the tri-state area, which is Jersey, PA, Delaware, whatever you want to call it, if you went to the shore on the boardwalk, Wildwood, stuff like that, remember all the games you could play? It was like
Yep.
you throw a fucking dart at the wall and
Yep.
or you have to shoot the water into stuff and then
Yep.
you could
Yep.
win CDs. It was always the same stuff, the Prodigy, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You could always get all that. I remember I got the Blur tape from the boardwalk one
The
night. I
band
won.
Blur.
Yeah,
Woohoo! That band.
exactly. Yeah. When I was super young, I was into that fucking song. And I remember I got the tape and was playing it. And I was like, yeah, this is great, man. And now I can't even listen to it. It's like, oh,
Well, that song has been done so many times.
oh yeah, that's
So
another
many
song.
times.
That's another song you hear at like sporting events.
Yep. Yep.
It's like, all right, enough.
It's again, can we get to like modern music? Can somebody play like the breakdown, the intro to Earth Crisis? Right?
Yeah,
Like
pretty soon you're gonna
uh
hear what's that band that's huge that everybody hates, loves to hate?
Loathe?
No, the band that
Kubla Khan.
Sleep Token.
Sleep Token. Yep.
Yeah, you're gonna be hearing that at games soon. All that stuff.
Speaking of music, good music in weird places, I just watched that movie The Presence. by Steven Soderbergh, the horror movie shot in first person
Was
on
it
an
good?
iPhone. It was good. Puma Blue shows up. At one point, the music starts and I paused it. And my wife hates when I do that. What are you doing? I'm pretty sure this is Puma Blue. Hold on. Yep, I was right. Carry it along. Move it along. Yeah, good stuff. So,
What's fitting?
yeah, it absolutely is fitting. It absolutely is fitting. All right, everybody. I'm sure we definitely took some of you down memory lane. Remember playing the PS1. Remember having to change the controller to the second port to beat Psycho Mantis in Metal Gear Solid. Video games and nu metal were synonymous for a long chunk of time. And nu metal was, it really is. The more we do the show, Tim, the more there's times I sit back and laugh at how insane it is that culturally this was the biggest thing in the world for a decent amount of time.
I mean, it still kind of is. It's just not the same if you think about it.
Yeah, yeah. But just to think that at one point everybody had a Corn T-shirt. At
Yeah,
one point, Limp Bizkit was red Yankee hats were inescapable. They were inescapable. It's just
100%.
totally nuts. All right, everybody. On the way out, I want to give a shout out to my boy Ramon Matos. He does And Justice for Art. So this is a passion project of his. This is a hardcover book of the history of a lot of different album covers, and there's tons of stuff in here. That's what is that? Dark Throne. And here we have
Oh,
Brutal
he did that?
Truth. Yep. Here's Pestilence. It's the story behind album art and the importance of album art. And he interviews the bands, he interviews the artists. He talks about what was big culturally at the time. Go to And Justice for Art. He still has some copies on sale. I can tell anyone that if you have watched more than one episode of our show and you like what we cover, you want one of these books. He's done 3 different books so far. This is the fourth, which is a hardcover reprint of the first one with an additional 120 pages. You want this in your library. You want a copy of this. This is something you're going to want to keep. Believe it or not, some of these books, the more obscure they get, the more desirable they are. I have a copy of Burning Fight up there, the 90s hardcore band book, which you can't find for less than 70, $80 in most places, which is totally insane because I paid 20 for it. So check out, shout out to Ramon. Uh, check out Injustice for Art. Go pick up a copy of his book. You'll really like it. And with that being said, thanks for tuning in, watching, listening. If you like what you heard, if you like what you saw, if you're interested in our conversation, please like, comment, and subscribe. We really would appreciate it. New episodes every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Reaction vids on Fridays, and we're going to start doing shortcuts Mondays and Tuesdays. So be on the lookout for that. New Breed _ podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We are on TikTok. Newbreedpodcast at gmail.com, 267-297-4627 for your audio complaints. See you in our Facebook group. See you on r/noodle, r/noodle. Have another IPA, Jay. Cheers.